So let's get started with Employer Insights. So you might be wondering who we are. We just want to do some quick introductions. So your hosts for today are myself. I'm Anita Manuel, and I'm the Associate Director for Career Education. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Lisa, and I'll have her introduce herself.
Yes, hi, I'm Lisa Tchaikovsky. I'm the Assistant Director of Employer Engagement. Welcome, so glad you're here.
And then today's guest is Brian,
Yay!
University Recruiting for Microsoft. And so Brian's going to be kind of sharing some of his insights. We're going to pick his brain and see what he can kind of let us know. And we're going to jump right into the questions, Brian. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Got my coffee.
You got your coffee? Okay, good. So first off, we kind of want to know a little bit about you and your role at Microsoft, and then how did you get started in the field of what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. So hi everyone, for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, like Anita just mentioned, my name is Brian and I'm a university recruiter with Microsoft. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and my current role is focused on hiring technical talent, so specifically software engineering students for roles at Microsoft, whether that's into internship roles or full-time roles. I'm the main kind of recruiting contact for all schools in the Bay Area. So anywhere as far south as UC Santa Cruz, as far north as UC Davis, Stanford, Berkeley, San Jose State, SF State, and everything in between. I've held a few roles at Microsoft. Before this role, I worked as a technical recruiter at Hispanic serving institutions. So I worked in schools in Florida and Texas. I get to travel to places like El Paso and Miami, recruiting great talent, specifically Latinx talent for Microsoft. And then before then, I got to do like this mythically cool job. I was an international recruiter, and that's actually the first role that I was hired into. I spent my first 2 years mostly on airplanes and in different countries. I got to travel to like over 11 countries to bring on students for opportunities with our company. And my Instagram was probably the coolest it's ever been during that time. But now I've moved to something that's like very local. I'm hardly ever on planes these days, and especially not over the last 6 or 7 months that we've been in this pandemic. In terms of how I got started, my first job out of college was working at a small private school. I worked, it was a school that was focused on bridging the gap between corporate business and low-income high school students. And every student at the school that I worked at earn their tuition by working 1 day a week in a corporate setting. So I worked with employers to help them, understand how to, train their students and what to expect, and how to, create a work study program that would be beneficial to both the students and the companies. And then I obviously worked with the students to help them get ready for that experience too. So I've always worked with students. After that, I worked as a recruiter for a very similar school in San Francisco. So I think, big themes for me that I identified pretty early on after college was that working in education and with students is something that I really care about and I feel passionate about. But I also, recognized how important it is to connect students to corporate opportunities, and that's exactly what I do now. I, work with students to get them here as they start their careers.
Perfect. And then before we move to the next question, what did you study?
Yeah, I studied international development, which had nothing to do with what I'm studying now. The big takeaways for me from what I studied was that I was really passionate about the subject, so I think it helped me understand that I was really curious about people in particular, and more kind of motivated by some things related to like social justice. So for me, understanding the difference in, inequities in education and economic opportunities across countries was something that really fascinated me, and then helped me kind of get inspired to work with students that are in underserved places. So it's a good takeaway, but didn't really quite matter at the end of the day.
That's great. So Brian, many students worry about finding internships and jobs in this economy and environment. What are your top tips for the job and internship search during these challenging times?
Yeah, I totally hear that, and I think that that anxiety is real, and it's fair. And I know this is not like a normal recruiting season. I do want to shine a bright light and say that a lot of companies are still hiring like hundreds and even thousands of students. Microsoft in particular has hardly made big changes to the number of students that we're hiring. It's a little less, but really it's not significantly worrisome, at least in this tech space. And it sounds like if you're interested in Microsoft, you might be interested in working for a tech company, and a lot of those companies are not drastically cutting the opportunities that they have reserved for students, or that they typically reserve for students. In terms of the tips that I have, they would probably be the same that I'd have for students outside of this economic situation, and it's that distinguishing yourself is incredibly important. It can feel challenging, but I would encourage you to think specifically about how to indicate your potential and how to indicate your passion. And the 2 P's is often the way that I frame it to students. And I want to say that this is like specific to Microsoft, that we're looking for passionate, folks that have also demonstrated potential. But I think that that's true across any company. As students, we're not expecting you to have years of specialized experience or to really like be an expert in any sense. What we're looking for is our students that are like eager to grow, that are quick to learn, and that have experiences on their resume that have indicated to us that they have that potential to grow with us, and that they run with an opportunity to intern with us or to work with us full time. The things that can really help you distinguish yourself would be the things that you do above and beyond what like the average student at your school does. So very commonly I meet students who have listed their coursework, and that takes up a lot of space on their resume, and then they'll list like every academic project that they've had. And while they might have a pretty strong academic record, nothing on their resume really stands out from the other students that I've also seen with the same academic projects and the same coursework. What stands out to me are the students that maybe attended a hackathon, or maybe that started their own personal projects, or the students that took on a leadership role or got involved in a tech-related engagement. That to me would show me that they're passionate about technology. They're going above and beyond, but they're also learning a lot of cool stuff along the way that's incredibly relevant. Students that have gone on to become TAs or mentors or to lead their own initiatives, those are the things that really stand out to me. So no matter where you are at in your college career, whether you just started, that's perfect. Take this, take notes with some of these ideas and start thinking about how you can go above and beyond. And then if you're towards the end of your college year, it's never too late to start. So find ways that you can really take advantage of the resources that the school has provided you. This Career Center in particular is awesome at creating all these opportunities and connecting you all with those opportunities. So keep doing things like this, keep learning, and if you don't land your dream job out of college the first time around, that's pretty common. I think it's a rarity for people to land this dream job right after. Sometimes it takes experimenting and working in a nonprofit, maybe like the way I did, to learn and grow and develop the skills that you need to land that dream job eventually.
That's great. Thank you.
Those are some great tips. And it's funny because as you were discussing the 2 Ps, right? The passion and potential, all of a sudden the questions box is kind of blowing up, because I think it's hard for students, and I might go out of order here and skip down to the because the questions are very specific as to how do I actually demonstrate passion? Do you want me to write, I am a passionate person? And I think you gave right? Or passion project might be something new as a term that some students are hearing. How do I develop one? Or can it be anything? And I sometimes think of passion projects just looking at things that you already love, and then maybe using the skill sets that you're developing in school to practice it on your own, or something to someone, like I developed a website for you because I love
Yep.
your organization, and if you can use it, great. And can you give us a little bit more
Yeah, absolutely. And I
on
think
resumes?
yeah, no, I think just to kind of respond to that idea of like a passion project, I think that that's something that can be really simple. It doesn't need to be this like incredibly unique and novel idea. I'll give an example. When I was recruiting in El Paso, Texas, it's a small town that doesn't have a lot of tech presence. To be honest, like many of the students aren't as fortunate as you all are here in San Jose to have tech companies in your backyard and these either co-op or internship opportunities seemingly everywhere. But this student, he was really excited about, computer science, and he had just started school. I think he was in his sophomore year. And during the summer of his freshman to sophomore year, he worked at an amusement park that was local to El Paso. And, he noticed that one of the most common questions he'd get from the patrons of this amusement park was, how tall do I have to be to ride which ride? Because like depending on the rides, it was just like they weren't standard. Like some rides were 48 inches and others were 52 inches. And he built a really simple app that he would encourage people to download, and then you can input your height, and then it would tell you which rides you were eligible to ride for, and he like added the map. And it was like really simple. I mean, it wasn't like this revolutionary idea, but at the time, like for him to be like a sophomore, just getting into computer science, who took it upon himself to find a problem that he saw and take the skills that he had to create a solution in the space that he was in, like it can be that simple. So don't like overthink it, and don't get overwhelmed by like this idea that it has to be something insane. And then to answer the broader question around like how do you demonstrate your passion and potential, I reiterate some of the things that I mentioned earlier that can translate as passion. And for us, passion might look like those projects. Passion might look like those extracurricular involvements. It might look like leadership in an organization. It might look like, taking on this new coding language that you learned, and you built these certificates. I think with the resources that you all have between like the internet and being able to really learn a lot of things outside of school, ask yourself what you can build with those things. Like, what can you do? How can you apply this so that you get practice? And then the potential piece, it's like, your academic record can demonstrate potential. It's not everything. If you have this killer GPA and you took all these classes, that's really a good sign for me. It's not everything. So if you don't have a great resume, don't, think that you can't demonstrate you have potential. You can show potential by being someone who's mentored others, who's TA, signed up to be a TA, who's, taken that advanced class that maybe most students their age don't. So that's how I would recommend you think about some of those things. And I know it can feel really, a lot of students ask me, what's the recipe? How can I guarantee that I can get an interview? And the truth is, it's not an exact science, and there is no guarantee, and there is no recipe. But you have to, think about some of the things that I mentioned in order to put your best foot forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lisa, I will punt the next question to you.
Oh, okay. Let me see here. So can you explain what to expect in a virtual internship?
Yeah. This is a good question, and something that we were figuring out ourselves this whole summer. So we transitioned to a virtual internship, and I know many companies did. It was what's going to happen? This is going to be a big experiment. For the biggest tips that I can give students is to, I think the virtual space, with the work that you have on your team, I think you're going to have plenty to accomplish and plenty to do in that space alone. At Microsoft, we're really intentional about getting students projects that are challenging and impactful and meaningful. So you can stay busy doing your work all summer, and that's a given. But in order to get the most out of your internship experience, you have to be proactive in attending some of those extracurricular things that aren't quite required for your project, but that just are helpful for you to fully take advantage of the experience that you have as an intern. For me, and the way we look at it at Microsoft is this is your your dream 12 weeks where you can like do whatever you want, ask whatever question you need, meet the people that you want to, in order to like fully like suss out whether this company is right for you. And when you have that like behind the scenes look, like it's not always as easy to like actually peek behind the curtain and meet people, or to network, or to ask the questions and find the team that you want to work for eventually, if it's not like required. It's easy to get caught up in the things that you have to do, but I would really encourage students to like be proactive about networking, be proactive about like the people that you meet and asking about their experiences. That curiosity is especially important. It's always been important, but especially in like a virtual space, I'd say that's something to think about. I would also say that like the little things like video and having like just like like being ready to be on video is something that is always optional. Like no one will ever require you to turn your video on, but I found that it's so much easier and better and really beneficial for you to like come ready to like show your face. And I don't have the best lighting in this apartment. I actually have this like little lamp that my team sent me so that we could do these virtual events and just always be ready to be on camera. So in this virtual space, I'm sure you've heard this a zillion times, like don't be afraid to turn on your video and be the first to turn on your video. People usually reciprocate. And hopefully, and know too that this will hopefully be temporary, but these are good skills to build regardless, because maybe you will eventually work in a remote location, and those skills will always be helpful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good tips. I do agree with the video piece. It's because so much human interaction, even just seeing someone else, like making eye contact with you, does make it a little bit easier to kind of want to connect and support and like cross-functional teams. It's a big difference. Okay, so we're going to pivot a little bit. Can you talk to us about LinkedIn? We get tons of questions about students saying, I found a recruiter on LinkedIn. I reached out to them. They never responded to me. Is it okay for me to reach out? So do you guys at Microsoft, do you use LinkedIn to source talent? And if so, or if you're getting a lot of requests for connections, what are some of your top tips? And then also, if easier, what not to do?
Yeah, totally. So LinkedIn is one of the many tools that we as recruiters at Microsoft can use. And, some recruiters on my team love LinkedIn, and like they've built their brand on LinkedIn, and, you can find them reaching out to students and doing a lot of that, like kind of cherry picking their talent and like going after students that are involved with like conferences, or maybe that are scholarship recipients. This like thing. Every recruiter chooses which, tools they'd like to leverage. One thing that I really love is working with student groups. So that's one of my favorite like tools in my toolbox. That's been a helpful way for me to connect with students by hosting virtual recruitment events. And then a lot of us rely on the online application as well. So that's like the first piece to really, I think, getting considered for Microsoft. It has to be, that you have to apply online. So that's like a big plug that's specific to Microsoft that I'll just throw in here now, and I'm sure I'll iterate before the end of this call. That said, it's hard to guarantee or to tell you like that, there's hard and fast things to expect from LinkedIn. Some recruiters like me aren't really using their LinkedIn to source talent. Like I have a really simple profile, and to be honest, I have thousands of requests from students that want to connect. I get a lot of messages, and I just quite frankly don't have the bandwidth to respond. And my inbox in and of itself is already, we get hundreds of messages over, a very short period of time when our recruitment season happens, which, by the way, is typically from like August to November. So don't take it personally if a recruiter doesn't reach back out to you. I think it's very common for folks in my role to be pretty overwhelmed, to be frank, about the number of people that they're corresponding with, especially over this time period. I would say it doesn't hurt to send a message in case that they are. I don't ever, receive a message from a candidate and think like, oh, I'm not going to hire them. Like they've bugged me with this message. No, I mean, if anything, I feel a little bad that they are kind of sending a message in a place where I won't respond. I do typically respond to mail, but I don't encourage you to reach out to a recruiter if you don't have a specific question. At least it's true in my case. I often have candidates to reach out to like ask if they can schedule like a 30-minute phone call, like, or to get coffee while I'm on campus when things aren't in a pandemic. And I think it really depends on the company. For me, in my space, it almost like it breaks my heart to have to like respond and say like, I can't take a phone call with you because I have so many students requesting that. So I do have like a really robust response that I have, for everyone. Like, thank you so much for your interest in Microsoft. You have to apply online in order for us to consider you, or thanks for letting me know. But sending me an email doesn't change anything. I'm still reviewing online applications. I have a team of folks that, help me do that every week. So it's not like me personally that's reviewing these resumes. I train, dozens of people to help me review resumes, and then I take their recommendations and then move from there. I know one of the biggest questions that we get from students also that I'll maybe proactively answer is like, I applied 2 weeks ago and I haven't heard back. And I want to first empathize that it's like, applying to a job is kind of a vulnerable thing, and being left to hang with no response is like not a great feeling. So number one, I feel you. Number two, I want to just build a little context around what your application, like the pool of applications that you're in. There are hundreds of applications from San Jose State that we've received over the last month or so, which is so exciting. But from a volume perspective, like, we won't realistically be able to respond to every candidate within 2 weeks. This year, we've created a commitment that every student who applies to Microsoft will hear within 3 months of their application date, which is something we're like celebrating, because we're like, woo, I think we feel good about that. 3 months is still a long time, but know that your application is being reviewed. You will get a response in due time. But if you don't hear back, no need to panic, because it's just kind of the nature of the game. Until we have superhuman strengths to review more resumes in this short period of time than we do now, that's going to be some ambiguity that we ask your patience with.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anita, did you want me to ask the next question?
You're up, Lisa.
Okay, I'm up, batter up. All right. So, Brian, can you share with us how your organization supports diversity and inclusion in the hiring and development of employees of various backgrounds and experiences?
Yes. Oh, I love that this question is being asked, because I think it's super important. And these are the kind of questions that I wish students ask more often in like the panels that we have. So maybe I should, I should pitch these questions so that we can touch upon this. So I think that, number one, I'll state that my experience with this question is like so top of mind as a person of color and as someone who's worked in a variety of different types of places, and especially now. I think that that's always been top of mind for me because of my identity as a Latinx person, as a gay person. There's always been that like lens around like, how will I feel included in this work environment? But now I think everyone is asking this question, and it makes me so happy to think that companies are really held accountable to creating cultures and environments where people can feel supported to do their best work. At Microsoft in particular, I think diversity and inclusion is kind of like built into our mission in some ways. So it starts with like what we set out to do in the first place, and that's like to build products basically that empower everyone. Our mission statement is technically a little different. It's to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, which is kind of like the same thing that I just said, which is like we're building technology for our customers, who is everyone, from Fortune 500 companies that are using our cloud technology to support their business, to educational tools that folks are using in schools, in remote villages. Our aim is to really have this technology that is democratized and accessible to everyone. And we can't build products for the world if our workforce doesn't reflect that same diversity. And if we don't have this sense of inclusion baked into how we build our products, how accessible is the technology that we build or the hardware that we're putting out. So that everyone piece is big. When I think about how it's played out, I work in recruiting, which is probably one of the most important functions to really understand this concept. I can't tell you, if there's ever a meeting that we have around, or a conversation we have in recruiting great talent that doesn't in some ways pivot around this idea that we are thinking about opportunities that we can create for equity in our application process and to support students that have been traditionally underrepresented in this industry, and more specifically, in these job spaces. And what gives me a lot of energy is the fact that my team at Microsoft is really successful in helping drive some of that change for the company. So when we look at the number of the ratio of women to men engineers that university recruiting hires, it's 50-50, which is really exciting. But if you look at the broader pool, not only at Microsoft, but at nearly every tech company, we do see this gap where women are underrepresented typically by big margins. So to know that we're doing our part to really create that equity helps me know that we're walking the walk and talking the talk. But I would say that that's just specific to my experience. There are other ways that we support diversity and inclusion, whether that's by hosting trainings for everyone to understand what it means to dialogue with someone who is different than you are, how to leverage the strengths of others, how to remove the implicit biases that we all are guilty of having in order to create this place where people feel welcomed. Diversity is also part of our deliverables at Microsoft. So in every Connect we have, we're asked and tasked with how we're helping to change the culture to make it more inclusive, or how we're actively helping to invite folks that are underrepresented to the company. So there's a zillion other things that we do, from commitments to addressing racial injustice. That's one of the many things. We have a lot of development programs for folks that are underrepresented. We have employee resource groups for students that identify in a variety of ways, whether that's you're a woman in tech, or maybe you're however you identify sexually. Those are also groups that you can identify with. There's a ton of heritage and race groups as well. So know that those communities wait for you, and Microsoft has its hand dipped in so many different parts of this conversation, and it has been even before this became a spotlight subject.
Thank you for providing some time and a thoughtful response to that question, because as you can imagine, not only during this time, but there's a spotlight on the ability to be as inclusive as possible, but also for students to know, and this relates to our next question in the interview process, what parts of yourself do you allow to share in those interview processes where you feel it's been taboo before to talk about, or it could be a prime example of how you've overcome hardships to show that you have a lot of potential, right, or passion. Yeah. Or not sure to what degree you can really be transparent and open. So yeah. I don't know if you have, that's kind of a big question, but maybe just the interview umbrella, what's the interview process like at Microsoft? Any tips on successful interviewing? I know that we've had some in the chat box thinking are there trick questions, or certain things that I should really be preparing for?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and there's a lot of parts to it. I would start by addressing the question around how much do I share about myself, and this is a question that kind of breaks my heart. I had a student reach out to me recently and asked about actually, no, they didn't even ask. I was in a one-on-one resume review session with a student who had indicated that they worked at like a resource center, and it was really vague on their resume, and I was asking for more context because I was like, hey, like, sounds like a really cool experience, like you're director of this like incredible resource center, but I don't quite know what it's about or what it's for, and that context is really helpful in terms of us understanding, you know, what you're passionate about or why you're successful, or even just like the data around like why this is important. And he disclosed to me that, well, this is actually an LGBTQ plus resource group, and I left that off because I didn't want to feel discriminated against, and I was worried that, you know, if someone was reviewing my resume that they would disqualify me for being gay or like being associated with this. And I was like, oh, that's awful, you know, like that is a terrible feeling. And in the same breath, I didn't want to tell him that fear wasn't, you know, it didn't come from a place that was real, because I think that's a fair concern. I encourage that student in that moment to like be, you know, bold, honest, and truthful about like who you are, what your passions are. And I told them like very frankly, I said, you would never want to work for a company that didn't respect or value that part of you. And I can speak from like the training that we have and the intentionality that Microsoft has around its interview process and eliminating some of that bias that doesn't have any place in evaluating a candidate's eligibility for a position with our company is super like legit, you know, like, and I see that happen, and I'm often really impressed by the conversation that the interviewers have. I'm usually there as the recruiter to help make sure that, you know, we're not being biased, because that's really my job, is to like make sure that we have a good grip and a fair and unbiased hiring process. But these interviewers often come really having taken that training to heart, and they will, you know, challenge some of the assumptions that we even make sometimes, because it's never a perfect process. And I would drive that same advice to everyone here, is to be bold, be honest, and stand confident in your identities and sharing everything that's relevant to you and your truth and your experiences, because oftentimes those things are the things that will distinguish you. And in this student's case, it was like absolutely imperative that he shared that. Like, that's something that he's passionate about. It's something that he's had a lot of, you know, success and driven a lot of impact around, and for him not to include that would be a disservice to him and to us to learn that about him. And forget any company that would ever disqualify you or discount you for that. So that's how I'd answer that. Second thing about, you know, the application process and tips and questions, I would say, you know, preparing for the interview is like the probably most cliche advice that you've heard a zillion times, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone fail an interview because they didn't practice, and they've gone into it with this idea that they were just smart or like knew the subject matter, or were like had the technical excellence to get themselves through it, and didn't. And I can't tell you how many students I've seen who are brilliant, who have the wrong attitude, who can't collaborate, who don't think about some of the soft things, the soft skills required for a role, and don't get hired based off of that explicitly. And so my main points to drive here is that there is so much value in practicing, because like you only get better at these problem-solving questions by really becoming more familiar with them, and you also only get better by with interviewing by practicing with your friends and getting feedback. And that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of vulnerability, but find people and mentors and maybe even peers that can help, you can practice with, because like I can't tell you how many students failed their first time, and then you really like learned from that experience, went home, hit the books, practiced a ton, and then came back and crushed it. So the practice also builds confidence, which is something that is really unspoken of. Like, I think confidence like carries so many more students than I ever expected, and I've learned so much about people and just how life works from watching people. Like, some people are not as objectively like actually I don't agree that people are just talented or untalented, but there are some people who really believe in themselves, and that confidence carries them very far. And I have been blown away by how many brilliant people I've met who lack that confidence, who don't get quite there because of that, and like that thing that holds them back. So build confidence by practicing. There are no trick questions. I think the biggest trap I think that students fall into is, you know, trying to speed their way through this. I would encourage everyone, regardless if you're a technical, you know, interview or not, to slow down and, number one, ask for clarifying questions. Get a grip on, you know, the context of the question that you're being asked. Talk out loud, collaborate with your interviewer, because those are the things that you know, even if you get this wrong, like you have the wrong solution to the question, we're going to absolutely be curious about the way you're thinking about this problem. If you're asking the right questions and you're just off because you're not familiar with this data structure, or maybe you haven't taken the right course, but we can see that you're getting to a solution by asking the right questions and keeping an open mind and collaborating well with your interviewer. That's like oftentimes enough for us to be like, they didn't solve the problem, but I'm going to push them forward because I can see them like learning quickly and collaborating well. So that's what I'd say about that.
Very good. Okay, so thank you for going through the speed round. We covered a lot of territory in about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. But a lot of the questions we're getting are, can I still apply for internships at Microsoft? They're like very much related to hiring with your organization. So I want to just skip to your slide.
Yeah.
And go over the opportunities.
Perfect. So just to answer some of the questions that we're getting about like timeline and things like that, we do not have a deadline for our application process, so don't feel like you need to, that you're too late. But I will say that the sooner you apply, the better. We review resumes every week on a rolling basis, and we're inviting students to interview on a rolling basis. And we basically do that until all of our roles are filled. But most of our roles are filled by December of every year. So earlier the better, and those typically open in August. So watch the career site. It's usually like, last year we had it open really early. This year it took us a minute to get them posted, so they were posted on August 15th. But earlier the better. In regards to like the opportunities we hire for, there are two different internships that we hire for. We have a junior internship, which is our Explorer internship, and that's for freshmen and sophomores. It is a rotational program where you spend time in the software engineering and program management disciplines. You work with a small team of fellow interns to deliver results on a project with a team. There's a lot of support. If you're a sophomore in particular, this is like definitely the right opportunity for you, especially if you have never had an internship before. So that's this is more of like a early career. It's an access program. So if you're someone who has like a ton of experience as a sophomore, it's likely that we'll have you wait because this program might not be the right fit for you. If you're a freshman, we also ask that maybe you wait because typically sophomores are prioritized for that. So really like the folks that we really consider are those sophomores who are passionate, eager to learn, who haven't quite had that chance to intern yet. The university internship is for juniors, preferentially. Juniors who are also eager to learn, passionate about technology. You work specifically with a team on a project a little more independently. It's a 12-week paid internship. There's a lot of supports that are built into this, as well as like really fun opportunities across the company. And then finally, we have full-time opportunities for students that are graduating within the next year. And the disciplines that we hire for are everywhere from software engineering to business functions. So know that you have a lot of different openings. They're all on our website. And that said, Microsoft is a software company, and you can expect maybe 90% of our openings to be within software. So if you are a computer science student, a computer engineering student, you're someone who's coding, your chances statistically at finding an opening that is awesome is best. If you are someone who studies marketing, we still hire marketers. Just know that that's a small percentage of the roles that we have open. So don't get too discouraged if you apply and you don't quite get it. There are other companies I know get kind of focus on that type of hiring more broadly. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Okay. Brian, I'm gonna let you take a breath because we've got like 29 questions to go through.
Okay, I think we can do it. I think we just hit 32.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna start easy. Does GPA really matter?
Yeah, so it is a helpful hint if it's great. And if it's not, I will forget about it. So we look at resumes holistically. If you have an awesome GPA and you're proud of that, put it on there. Like, show me you have that potential to learn because you're a great student. That's awesome. If you don't have that great GPA, don't sweat it. Just don't include it. If you're under a 3.0, just like don't include it. Often students ask me like, what's a great GPA? It really depends on the school. I would ask myself like, am I in a grad program that like where everyone has a 4.0 and like, you know, I have a 3.3, like maybe don't include it if that's the case and everyone typically has a 4.0. So the context there kind of matters. My general rule of thumb is like, you know, anything above a 3.5, like for sure put that in there. 3.0, 3.5, totally optional. And then anything below 3.0, just don't include it.
Okay, awesome. So you kind of addressed this really quickly earlier on about the majority of positions are going to be more on the STEM area. But we have a good number of people in the audience who are looking at design positions, analyst roles, data analytics, business analytics. Are those, are there areas for entry in those kind of departments? And if so, is it the same process, you know, going through the same process that you just explained?
So I'm not 100% sure, but if you go to the website and you search some of those like keywords, whether that's like business analytics or, you know, data analytics, those roles will typically show up. We also only have about 35 roles that we hire students for. So you can, you know, theoretically just, you know, filter by location, like, you know, US locations, and then you can just read through some of these descriptions and find the role that you think is great. One thing that might be a great like catch-all for students that are in some of these like information management systems majors is our customer-facing technology roles. We hire, you know, I think there's like 5 different roles underneath what we call customer-facing technologist roles, and those are anything from like, you know, support engineers to associate consultants. And these folks, they work directly with some of our larger clients to help like help them, you know, use our technology to transform their businesses. We're looking for people that are, you know, passionate about technology. They have that technical kind of like area of study, but they're not quite coders, and they're like really passionate about people and connecting with customers. So that's one plug that I'd say that I know we hire a lot of students into, and that's a very common route that we see for students in that information systems space.
Perfect. Okay. Lisa, I'm typing an answer, so can you ask one of the next questions really quick?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. So we have one question from a student talking about summer internships. So is Microsoft still recruiting for summer internships, summer 21?
Yep, we totally are. So you can expect us to be hiring until about December. So please get those applications as soon as possible.
Thank you. Let's see here. It says here, for university new grad positions, do referrals make a difference?
Yeah.
I think you covered that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think in the past, you know, companies, Microsoft is one of them, has operated on this, like, if you know someone, like, you can get in and they'll know you. I personally have moved away from accepting referrals. I had a limited referral pool for my intern candidates to, you know, refer, you know, candidates that they thought were great. That was a small number. I get hundreds of referrals from internal employees, from students that are, you know, already on campus, maybe interned in the past, and we are pretty committed to creating an unbiased and fair hiring process, and that means, you know, considering referrals against the general pool of applicants as well. It doesn't really sit well with me that if you know someone that you should, you know, be more likely to be hired. There's a lot of people that are great and also, you know, eligible and just as, you know, yeah. great opportunities for the fit, or fit for the opportunities that don't have that, kind of network capital. So I generally push back every referral that I have and put them in my general referral pool. But I know that that's different across companies.
Got it. Thank you. So we have an international student asking, does Microsoft provide support for sponsorships for full-time career opportunities or OPT, CPT for internships?
Yep, we do. We sponsor every student, regardless of where you're at, or your status as an international student. Typically, for international students coming up from outside the U.S., we offer the J1, and then and that's probably the hardest. So if you're already studying in the U.S., it's hardly ever an issue for us.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Are any hardware engineering internship roles open in addition to software engineering? I recall during Microsoft's seminar at SJSU last year that it was mostly only software engineering roles that were open.
Yeah, I mean, the same is true this year. Like I mentioned earlier, a majority of our openings are within software, and our hardware teams, we have interns that are with us every summer, and those are hundreds of students that we offer our full-time roles to first, especially if they do well in their internship. And this year we're seeing like a high number of hardware candidates that have accepted their offer, and not quite as many openings for hardware roles. That said, we're not a hardware company, so there's just it's a little tougher in that space. But don't get discouraged. Apply online. And all those roles are still hiring, but just in limited capacities.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to bounce back in.
Okay.
A little break. How you doing, Brian?
Good. Okay.
So this is a little bit more about on the process side, but I think it's helpful for students to understand how long the recruiting process might take. So the student had applied for an Explore program, and the message they get is routed to a recruiter. What can they expect after that point, and what's the timeline kind of look like?
Yep. So routed to recruiter is like the golden space you're in. It means that you're in the queue to have your resume be reviewed. Like I mentioned earlier, we will let everyone know within 3 months of their application date whether they've been selected. In the meantime, there's nothing else you can do but wait. If you do, decide you want to update your resume, or maybe there's a workshop that you attend and you're like, oh, this is awesome, I want to change my resume. You can go back into your resume and you can edit the documents that you upload. The biggest thing that I see students make mistakes at is that they don't upload a resume when they're asked to apply. And that's like just so hard to consider someone without a resume, because that's really how we choose students. And it's a really big trip up for us to have to go to your LinkedIn, your GitHub, to like try to gather some of the pieces there to see whether or not you'd be a good candidate. So like, do us a favor and make your resume as like clear as possible, well formatted, one page, with those experiences that make you a great candidate.
Okay. Question again, back to the interview process. Our students like details, so they're going to go back into, once the university recruiter maybe screens a resume or finds a good candidate, does that then go directly to the hiring manager, or what's the next step?
Yeah. A really great question, and I'm happy that it's asked. So you first apply online, and then you're in this pool of online applicants. The way it typically works for university recruiters is we have like teams of alumni that are like software engineers, and we get together and we review resumes together. In my case, we review resumes every Monday, so we go into the online application, and then students are basically nominated to move to the first round screen. And then once students are nominated, I will push their application forward to the first round screen. The first round screen is a general virtual 30-minute interview where we are not considering you for a specific team. There's no hiring manager involved. We just have someone who's been trained to screen talent and make recommendations for who should advance to the final round interview, which is the second interview stop. theoretically, you go to the first round screen, you do your 30-minute interview, it goes really great, your interviewer leaves you great feedback. I then go in, review all of the feedback as a recruiter, and then decide to invite you to a final round interview, depending on this, the amount of space. What's tricky sometimes is that and this is good for you all to know, is that even if you pass the first round interview, there's a chance that you won't advance to the final round, and that's because final round interview spaces are really competitive and they are a little harder. And I don't mean that to discourage you. I just want you to know that it doesn't always mean that you should take it personally and feel like you weren't good enough because you didn't quite make it through. It's hard because it's a fairly competitive process. That said, if you go to the final round interview space, you will likely interview with the team that you're being considered for. We have some students that go to interview loops, so it's just one team and you rotate between 2 to 4 people on that team. Interviews for internships are typically just 2 final round interviews, and each lasts about 45 to 50 minutes. For full-time roles, it's typically 4 interviews, and those again last anywhere between 45 to 50 minutes. So if you get the recommendation at the final round stage to get an offer, then you'll work with a different recruiter who will draft up your offer letter and then give you all the details that you need, and then you're hired. So it's only a 2-step process, or maybe 3 if you count the online application, the first round screen, and the final round screen. But I know it can feel like a lot because it's a little opaque from the outside in. It's hard to know what's happening, but hopefully that explanation helps.
Perfect.
Awesome. So there was a question that came in about internships, again, summer internships, and a student wanted to know if it will be a virtual internship in the summer.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's like the golden question because everyone is trying to figure that out. We have a team of folks that's like on that, and they've committed to making a decision on that by the end of December of this year. So it's going to depend on what's looking most likely. I have zero idea what that will look like. I feel like I have a guess, but it's not rooted in anything like real. So I won't distract us with my own opinions.
Got it.
So I'm going to start kind of combining some questions that we're seeing some themes here. You mentioned earlier passion projects, but also hackathons. Is Microsoft sponsoring any upcoming hackathons, or how do students keep their eye out on hackathons that might be good for them to get into?
I think, the Career Center typically knows, right, if there's like hackathons. Do you guys ever...
We post local hackathons for different organizations, but I think they're wondering if there's something specific that Microsoft might be hosting.
So we partner with a few student groups throughout the year, and I don't have any plans to pick those up. Like right now, we don't have any hackathon plans. But those, if they're not happening at your school, you can attend a hackathon at Berkeley. You can attend a hackathon at Stanford. Like those are all open to other students, and in real life, when that comes back, you can even like spend a weekend at Stanford and stay up all night and meet all these cool people. Like hackathon culture really fits well into what we're looking for. It's all about learning. It's all about exercising those skills, learning new things, and getting into and learning what you're passionate about. So that's a great way that we love to identify students. We were just at Cruise Hacks right before the world shut down, and like I have so many like really eager students that I met from that weekend that I spent up in the Redwoods with the students, and a lot of them I was able to stay in touch with, and they're now at the final round interview stage, and they're making it through like that. So it's just a good way to learn and to distinguish yourself.
Lisa, you can do the next question, and we have 4 minutes left, so let's see if we can
Okay.
themes here.
Okay. Okay. So a question came in: would certifications from LinkedIn Learning and is it Udemy helps to demonstrate the potential and passion?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great way to indicate that.
Perfect. Okay. So let's see here. We've got a current applicant for an SDE intern position at Microsoft with a referral from a current software engineer at Microsoft. I just want to ask if it was possible to update my application at all. I'm currently unable to do so because my application has been routed to a different job ID, I guess job ID number that isn't currently shown to the public.
Oh,
So
that seems like a really specific situation. I would encourage that candidate to reach out to you all to connect to me. That way I can troubleshoot with that candidate individually.
Okay,
So,
got it.
yeah, ask Lisa for my email address and I will answer your question via email.
Okay, let's see here.
All right, so, oh, did you want to ask the next question, Anita?
No, they're just new ones coming in. Some of these, you know, a lot of times I'm going to be really a little bit blunt here, but I would post questions that cannot be answered by going to the careers page and just reading like job descriptions or, you know, so that does show some basic passion and interest if you're doing a little bit of research ahead of time. So I would definitely say like any questions about, you know, specific roles for certain majors, please go to the careers pages on Microsoft. And Brian, you can correct me if there's a better way to do this, but start searching in there and maybe by the category of internship, if it's entry level, just to kind of see the different types of titles that come up and reading the descriptions and qualifications so that you have a good idea of what might be available beyond maybe just some of the STEM majors.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that this is the golden question. If students have been inspired by you today and they'd like to connect with you in some way, what are some ways that they can hunt you down without maybe stalking you on LinkedIn, since you're probably not going to have time to respond to them anyway?
Yeah. So I would say that I will likely advertise any type of engagement that I have that's open to like students broadly through the Career Center. That's definitely like we have a strong partnership and we've been really in touch about like how many students we're hiring and what our goals are and what, you know, how we're recruiting. Right now, I know it can feel like I'm a little inaccessible and there's no way quite around that right now. Like I would encourage students to nearly like 95% of the time when students send me an email, their questions are actually like, they're either questions that can be answered by doing a little research online, or they are questions that, they're not questions, they're just like, hey, I just want to introduce myself and I applied online, which is like just not needed. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but given like the volume of students that we're working with, I probably spend a lot of my day responding to mail like that. So I have a templated response and it connects you to more resources. What I will do, Anita, is I'm going to drop 2 links in the chat that I think would be helpful to you as you want to learn more. The first link is actually an invitation to follow us on LinkedIn. We have a university recruiting group there that has some really, it's a resource group. So let me actually just see if I can get this copied. And then I'll throw it in the, oh, it says to all panelists and attendees. Okay, I'm new to, okay, that, no, I didn't.
And for those of you who, I know there might be some people who left in the recording, what we can do is add these 2 links, the slide deck, so that you'll get them as well.
Cool. I would say follow this group. Actually, there's a few things that I can tell you right now. I'm excited that this question was asked, and this is a good way to end. So everyone can join the LinkedIn resource group using the link that I just sent. If you are curious about like our recruitment process and anything, like this is a super comprehensive resource for you to access and just learn more about, here we go, hold on. It's a sway document that has like a ton of information. I would say more specifically, if you're interested in attending a virtual recruitment event that Microsoft hosts, I'm going to get you a link to our virtual events calendar so that you can attend those.
Awesome.
Oh no, I can't find it. One second.
So I also want to say that's the benefit to attending some of these events, in addition to getting just some information and your ability to have some questions answered, is now we're getting some additional links that may not be common knowledge out and about and may not be posted or easily found. So do continue to come to Employer Insights, because a lot of times our featured guests are sharing additional links and databases that most of you might not otherwise have access to. So thank you so much, Brian, for your time today. We learned.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
No, I'm happy to help, and I know that creating like transparency for some of these like bigger companies is like helpful, and I've been on the other side where like you're just wondering how it all works, especially if you don't know someone. So thank you all for hosting this and providing this, you know, opportunity to just demystify some of this process. I hope that you all apply online and that we can consider you this season, and I wish you all the best.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone. That concludes Employer Insights for today. Again, I'm going to ask Edlin to pop the Google form back in the chat box if you want to ensure you get a copy of this recording. And we also will share the links that Brian gave out today. So thanks so much, and happy Friday.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.
Hi. Thank you, Brian.
Happy Friday.